He sat with him, and I know he talked with my dad about pursuing this. So I don't know what he saw or what he think he may have seen, but he was a, jet pilot, a test pilot, and he decided that there's something going on, and he wanted to work with my father to figure out what it was.
The vehicle carried a payload named Prometheus, launched on a Titan IV rocket, and headed northeast towards the constellation of the Big Dipper. This alignment has uncanny parallels to a ritual described in the 1977 grimoire known as the Necronomicon. According to the text, the best time to perform the ceremony of walking, a kind of spiritual journey to the stars, is when the Great Bear hangs by its tail in the sky. The ritual is said to work best around midnight, facing north, with specific emphasis on the northeast, the direction the Big Dipper rises. The number 5 is the sacred, and the launch occurred at 050, 5 years into the millennium, on a patch covered in 5 pentagrams.
1.
Some researchers, like Peter Lavenda, have suggested that figures close to these launches encouraged people like Tom DeLonge to study Greek mythology, especially the story of Prometheus, to better understand the UFO phenomena. That name, of course, matched the payload on the NROL-16. After the launch, the remaining Titan IV rockets were retired. One went to the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The other went to McMinnville, Oregon, the site of one of the most famous UFO photographs ever taken in 1950. All slightly schizo coincidences? Maybe. But Lavenda has said that he's personally received letters from inside the US military praising the Necronomicon for being quote-unquote spot on, including some from officers in Strategic Air Command. For years, his book was even a bestseller at Fort Benning.
In just a few minutes, we're going to be by annual surge of close to 400,000 vacationers.
Then there's the symbolism of the Big Dipper itself. In Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the first UFOs to appear above Devil's Tower form the shape of the Dipper in the sky. Jacques Vallée noted that Betty Hill's abduction story also began with her seeing one too many stars in the Dipper. Even Navy pilot Ryan Graves, who's very humble in his claims, has said that pilots reported UAPs emerging from the Dipper, and even dogfighting near it in orbit. Ancient Egyptian rituals used dipper-shaped tools to send pharaohs into the afterlife. Taoist sages would trace its stars in ascension rituals. Ptolemy, one of the fathers of modern astronomy in 2nd century AD Alexandria, would also say that souls would ascend through Orion's belt. Even the Thule Society saw the circumpolar stars as a point of origin for non-human intelligences. And then look at modern super experiencers like Chris Bledsoe. Bledsoe believes that the non-human intelligence he is in contact with, which he has termed the Lady, is linked to the Dipper, and that her companions call themselves, quote-unquote, the Guardians. Coincidentally, Guardians is the term now used by the US Space Force, and the emblem of Space Delta 7, the Space Force's intelligence wing, shows a bear holding a key in front of the Big Dipper. So we return to the central question. Are these patterns just coincidence? Are we connecting the dots in a crazy way? Pareidolia, finding patterns where they don't exist? Or does the pattern these disparate dots create suggest something deeper? We return to Diana Pasulka in her discussions with the enigmatic Tyler D. Timothy Taylor, the NASA mission controller. One of the most curious aspects of Taylor's story is his claim that he receives downloads from an intelligence he believes is non-human. These downloads appear as sudden flashes of insight, full mental blueprints, or instructions. He says they come to him through specific protocols, and they've led to real patents in technologies. They have also shaped how he approaches his ongoing work within the US space program. Even if we take the most skeptical approach, assuming Taylor is simply a high-ranking engineer with strange personal beliefs, it still leaves us with a wild but undeniable fact. Someone overseeing major NASA launches believes they are influenced by a non-human intelligence. I'm fairly sure Tim Taylor is a known entity at Kennedy Space Center. I personally tried to meet up with him once, but he had to go to Florida for a launch. And finally, I found this bizarre connection between Tim Taylor and mid-century anti-gravity inventor Thomas Townsend Brown. Brown's daughter Linda reviewed Tim Taylor's book on Amazon before anybody knew who Tim Taylor was, well before he was written about even pseudonymously in Diana Pasulka's American Cosmic. And then Tim Taylor apparently told Christopher Bledsoe's son, Ryan, that he was part of a secret time travel program in Nassau in the Bahamas, and that Thomas Townsend Brown was the president of that group. I know a ton about Thomas Townsend Brown, and I can tell you definitively he was obsessed with time travel. He also spent an inordinate amount of time in the Bahamas with the inspiration for James Bond and Winston Churchill's super spy, William Stevenson. And then there's Tim Taylor telling Pasulka that he was part of the quote-unquote adjustment team, an homage to Philip K. Dick's great book about a team of time travelers. And if we're gonna entertain this speculation for a second, then how would a secret time travel program actually work? We know in general relativity that gravity and time are highly related. So maybe you do an experiment like Thomas Townsend Brown's. You might create a high voltage environment that bends space-time itself. Or you might launch a very oddly timed rocket that happens to coincide with ancient traditional rituals. Who knows? I doubt we'll ever know. But even if you dismiss all of those crazy theories, it is clear that the modern space program is not just a technical story. It's a story about consciousness, belief, and the role of the human mind in space exploration. This same theme shows up in other unexpected places. Take James Ryder, former vice president of Lockheed Martin and a director at Skunkworks. In 2018, he gave a talk called The Garment of God. In it, he emphasized the relationship between mysticism, consciousness, and technological progress. In a separate lecture focused entirely on UAPs, Ryder spoke openly about ritual, altered states, and the overlap between ancient spiritual entities and modern contact experiences. Dr. James Lakatsky, the DIA physicist involved in the OSAP program, made a similar point. Within the US government covert UFO program, Lakatsky writes that the team gained access to a non-human craft and entered it.
The United States government has in its possession a craft of unknown origin, and you were able to access the inside. Is that correct?
Yes.
But elsewhere, he's taken things further, saying that if full human capabilities were known to us right now, it is not something that we need to fear. Our capabilities never have been fully revealed, and we're still learning. We've got a long way to evolve still. Then there's Dr. Jeffrey Kripal, chair of philosophy and religious studies at Rice University. On the Danny Jones podcast, he revealed that Charles Chase, director of Lockheed's Revolutionary Projects organization, once invited him to give a private talk to top engineers on one topic: levitation. Kripal spoke about shamans, saints, and monks from around the world who claimed to float during intense spiritual or meditative states. Apparently, Chase felt these accounts were worth studying. He wanted the engineers at Skunkworks to hear about it. And Chase wasn't alone. Other senior Skunkworks figures, Robert Weiss, Steve Justice, and Eric Schrock, along with Air Force Research Lab Commander Neil McCaslin, all advised Tom DeLonge and Peter Levenda's Secret Machines project. These men weren't UFO YouTubers. They were among the most technologically capable individuals in the defense sector. It should come as no surprise then that the core thesis of the book Secret Machines is that UAP are mystical machines. According to both DeLonge and Levenda, these elite scientists frequently circled back to one concept in their conversations: human consciousness. So when experiencers say they fly the craft with their minds, it might not be as far-fetched as it sounds. It seems like people in the most elite circles of aerospace seem to entertain the same possibility. When Diana Pasulka asked Taylor why he was interested in her work on religious studies, his answer was simple: the next development in my field, rocket science, will come from yours, religion. As the 20th century philosopher Henri Bergson put it, the mystical summons up the mechanical. The origins of the process of mechanization are more mystical than we might imagine. He also said, the eyes can only see what the mind is prepared to comprehend. It seems like an inescapable conclusion that the history of rocket science and physics is intimately connected to mystical traditions, the occult, and ancient mythology. Whether it was Einstein dozing off as a patent clerk in Zurich, or Dirac staring at the fire in Cambridge and downloading the Dirac equation, or Wolfgang Pauli receiving the architecture of the hydrogen atom in a dream, or Heisenberg receiving the mathematical underpinnings of quantum leaps at Helgoland. Throughout history, genius and inspiration have been described not as invention, but reception. It may be something that extraterrestrial or non-human intelligence is sharing with us, or it may be the truth that is being protected by secrets, as referenced by the first man to ever walk on the moon, Neil Armstrong.
We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
It was Neil Armstrong who asked to sit with my father and family. And turns out that he did talk with my father, and they talked seriously about creating a new UFO research group.
Wow. Which,
well, I think became CUFOs because Neil was fairly reclusive, not like Buzz Aldrin. Didn't really enjoy the spotlight. And especially in the early 70s, there was so much more stigma attached to the phenomena that he decided it's just not for me. But for me, some of the most telling evidence are these things. The fact that Neil Armstrong publicly sat with my father, who had
a reputation.
Had good astronomical bona fides, but was known for UFOs at that time. He sat with him, and I know he talked with my dad about pursuing this. So I don't know what he saw or what he think he may have seen, but he was a, jet pilot, a test pilot, and he decided that there's something going on, and he wanted to work with my father to figure out what it was.
Different parts of the brain have different activities.
Well, you know that, don't you?